Alright, on to example 3. So we're going to start with, again, an example of a variable on one side of the equation. And if you notice, this is something similar that we just did the other day. We're going to distribute. So negative 7 times b is negative 7b. And then negative 7 times positive 6 is negative 42. So again, this would be an example of simplifying first before you have to do SADMATH, the inverse operations, before you're going to solve. Okay? Now using SADMATH, I'm going to get rid of the negative 42 first by adding 42 to both sides. The negative 7b drops down. Negative 42 plus 42 is 0. And then negative 91 plus 42 is negative 49. Then to get b by itself, we're going to divide by, remember it's negative 7 to cancel the negative 7. You're left with b is equal to 7. So that should be a review. That should be pretty easy. Now if you notice on this, oops, sorry about that. If you notice on the other column, we have to distribute on both sides. So again, we have to simplify first before we start solving. So I'm going to distribute. I have negative 24 p minus 12. I'm also going to distribute that negative 3 on the right-hand side. So I get positive 18p minus 12. Okay? So this is a problem that was pretty similar to the front, where you have variables on both sides. To avoid negatives, I'm going to move all the variables and collect all the variables on the right side. So I'm going to move this negative 24 by adding 24p to both sides. Okay. Negative 24p plus 24p is 0. Be careful, the negative 12 drops down. Most people just put 12, so be careful with that. 18p plus 24p is 42p, and drop down the minus 12. Okay. Next, I have to cancel adding and subtracting first, so I'm going to add 12 to both sides. Okay. Negative 12 plus 12 is 0, and that's going to equal 42p. Now 42 is being multiplied by p, so to get p by itself, you're going to divide by 42. And 0 divided by any number is just 0. So p is going to equal 0. Alright, so let's go do some examples. Again, you're always checking to see if you can simplify first. You're either going to simplify by distributing, combining like terms, or sometimes you'll see in a little bit both. So here, I see that I'm going to have to distribute. So I'm going to distribute that positive 3 and get 3 minus 3r on the left. And on the right side of the equal sign, I'm going to distribute that negative 6 to get negative 6r minus 6. Again, I notice I have variables on both sides of my equation. To avoid negatives, I'm going to always try to move the variable with the least amount of variables, okay? So negative 6 is smaller than 3, so I'm going to add 6r to both sides. Again, you can add 3r to both sides and move all my variables to the right. You'll get the exact same answer, okay? So drop down the 3. Negative 3r plus 6r is positive 3r. Negative 6r plus 6r goes away, and then you're left with negative 6. My next step is you're going to subtract 3 from both sides, and you're left with 3r is equal to negative 9. And finally, last step, to get that 3 away from that r, you're going to divide by 3 to both sides. So r is going to equal negative 3, which I believe, yep, we got it right. Alright, now if you're not strong with fractions, this is definitely when you're going to need your calculator out. Okay, so I notice on the left-hand side, I'm going to have to distribute first. 1/2 times negative 8a, remember that's just half of negative 8. Sorry, half of negative 8 is just negative 4. So I have negative 4a plus 1/2 times 32, half of 32 is 16. Now remember, you do not combine that negative 8 and negative 1/3. You're just going to drop down the negative 8a and distribute that negative 1/3. Okay, so I have minus 1/3. A third of 6 is going to be 2a, and then negative 1/3 times 24 is just minus 8. You can think about it as 6 divided by 3 or 24 divided by 3 to get my 2 and my 8. My goodness, I don't know why they keep guessing. Okay. Now, I'm not going to collect the variables just yet because if you notice, I can combine like terms. Your goal is to simplify before you start collecting your variables. I'm going to drop down what's on the left. Negative 8a minus 2a is going to be negative 10a. Drop down the 8. Now I'm ready to collect because I cannot simplify on both left or right side of the equation. I'm going to go ahead and move all my variables to the left, so that means I have to move this negative 10a over. So I'm going to add 10a to both sides. Okay. Negative 4a plus 10a is going to be 6a. I'm going to drop down the plus 16 and the equal sign. Negative 10a plus 10a is, that cancels out. You're left with negative 8. Okay. My next step would be to subtract 16 from both sides. Let me erase this extra stuff. Okay. Drop down the 6a. 16 minus 16 is 0. Drop down the equal. Negative 8 minus 16 is negative 24. Divide by 6 to both sides, so a is going to equal negative 4. And we got it. Okay. So hopefully after those couple examples, you feel comfortable to try your homework tomorrow in class. Now, even though that myself or Ms. Wojcik will not be in class, you are still expected to try and work the entire period, and you are completing the homework. Please make sure you bring these notes that you took for homework from right now to class to help you with the homework. And we'll be back tomorrow and to answer any of your questions. Please do not forget that room 132 is the math resource room, so you can go there every day, every period during your lunch. Or you can come to see me before or after school. We'll be back from the field trip. Here is just a mixed review that you can complete. I'll go ahead and do a couple examples so you know what to do because you have a couple on your homework. All right. Remember, we're multiplying these fractions. Therefore, remember that's not when we take the reciprocal of the second fraction. We just simplify on the diagonals. So 10 and 5, I can divide both those by 5. So 10 divided by 5 is 2. 2. The 5 divided by 5 is 1. I can also divide my other diagonals by 17, so the 17 becomes a 1. The negative 34 becomes a negative 1. Now, I just multiply across. So 2 times negative 1 is negative 2. Sorry, I apologize, that's supposed to be a negative 2. There you go. Yes, because 34 divided by 17 is going to be 2. So when you multiply across, you get 2 times negative 2, which is negative 4. 1 times 1 is 1, which is also equal to negative 4. Now, 1 over here, we are dividing. So remember, dividing is the same thing as multiplying by the reciprocal. So I leave my first fraction, change the division sign to multiplication, and then I'm going to take the reciprocal of the second fraction. Now I'm just going to simplify like normal. 12 and 18 can both be divisible by 6, so the 12 becomes a 2, the 18 becomes a 3. I cannot simplify my other diagonal. Now you can go ahead and multiply across. Negative 5 times 3 is negative 15. 2 times 21 is going to be 42. Now if you notice, you can still simplify that. Negative 15 over 42 can be divisible by 3, so it just becomes negative 5 over 14. Alright, and number 6. Now remember, negative 11 is the same thing as negative 11 over 1. So now you can clearly see what's the numerator and the denominator. It's dividing again, so we're going to keep the first fraction, change the division sign to multiplication, and then take the reciprocal of the second fraction. Now, I always like to have that negative in the numerator so I don't forget about it. Let's go ahead and try to simplify my diagonals. I can simplify 66 and 11 because they're both divisible by 11, so the 11 becomes a 1. The negative 66 becomes a 6, negative 6. Okay, so negative 6 times negative 1 is 6. 10 times 1 is 10. Both are divisible by 2, so we divide numerator and denominator by 2 to get 3/5. And that is the solution. Again, make sure you bring this copy of your notes to class tomorrow to help you with the homework. The answers for the homework that will be given tomorrow will already be on our website.